All right, good morning. Welcome to another episode of the Liberty Dad Podcast, a discussion on politics and culture. I am your host, DL, America's most objective libertarian. If you're tuning in live, thank you for giving me your time so early. All right, well, guess what? It's Friday. We made it, folks. Made it through the week. It's Friday. This is the day where I set aside politics and I talk about something else. You know, I love my Dad Talk days. And what I do on Dad Talk is I talk about something related to being a dad, being a husband, being a man, you know, something along that line. Maybe all three, who knows. Today, I want to talk about the police. But before we get into that, I want you to remember that this show does not run on freedom fumes alone. So if you're watching me on Rumble, please smash that green $ button during the show to drop a Rumble rant. It's like tossing your good old dad, your pops, a cold one this early in the morning to keep the vibes high and the mics on. And if you really want to go all in, then click that subscribe button for just $5 a month because your support helps me fight the good fight. And if you're over there on YouTube and you're like, where are the super chats? Where's this or that? Well, we're working on it. We've got just barely under 200 watch hours to go, and I will be eligible for the super chats over there. So if you're like a big fan, of using YouTube, help me out. Go watch some of the old shows, get those numbers up, and get me past that mark. All right, this morning, we're talking about the police. There's a video from one of my favorite online accounts, King Randall. He works with young boys up there in Albany. Now, some people might think like he only works with little black kids, but I think Albany is like is majority black. So like the kids that he works with just tend to be black. It's kind of how it works. When the demographics are, much higher, that's who you have to work with, right? But he doesn't object to working with white kids or any kids that he comes in contact with. And his goal is to help raise boys. He's joined in. He's working in his community to help raise boys so that they're ready to face the world when they get older. And I love it. I think it's great. I've always had a passion for youth. When I was in my 20s, I worked at a church, and I was a youth director. I never called myself a youth pastor because I never went to seminary school. I just called myself a youth director, and I enjoyed it immensely. There were good times, there were bad times, but hands down, it was some of the best work that I've ever done in my life. Some of it. Of course, the best work that I've ever done is working with my own son. So a lot of what I have to talk about today is going to be like my perspective of, the police and how I plan to instruct my son. Now, he's 6 right now, so it's not a lot of instruction that we have to necessarily worry about. Okay? He's not, like, running around the streets in any way, shape, or form, going to get pulled over or anything like that. So we've got our work cut out at the moment. But he will get older, and, well, these lessons will come in handy. I've actually sat on this video for quite a while. I've got several videos to show you. But I've sat on the video that this like a 6-minute video where King Randall, he literally walks these boys through, here's how to interact during a police stop. And I loved it. I thought it was great. And he got a lot of heat for it. It's crazy. He talks about, I've got one of the videos that I have, he talks about how, well, you know what? Let's hear what he has to say. He was on Tim Pool's show with another guy that I really like, Maj Touré. You know him from Black Guns Matter. I've got a affiliate link for him, so go to his store. You can go to, I don't have it off the top of my head. Whatever. You can go to blackgunsmatter.shop, and you can use Liberty Dad for a 10% discount code, or you can just click on the link, the referral link that's in the show notes. Go there, buy some merch, support the show, support Maj. But here's this video. Let's go over to Dad TV. And we're going to check this out. So I've got a couple of videos to show you. So here over on Dad TV, we're going to see King Randall talking about some of the response that he's got, or that he received from people that were like watching the video of him instructing boys how to engage with the police. So let's check that out. All right.
I will say this. I have not had an experience with a white cop that was racist. That's just my experience. Every time I've been pulled over, I was doing something. Every time. I have never just been pulled over just because. I did a video with one of our local police. Now, mind you, our city's probably about 77% black, so almost all of our police force is all black men. So this whole we hate the police thing in my hometown, I'm just like, dude, you grew up with old dude. He was your football coach. Like, stop. I did a video with these kids, and we basically taught them how to interact with the police. One thing I always notice, even with my family and stuff, anytime you get pulled over, the first thing you do is just get an attitude. I'm just like, or maybe something's wrong, maybe you did something wrong. I got many tickets, I like to speed. But anyway, so I did this video to show them how to interact, let the windows down, talk politely, have your stuff ready, don't make any sudden movements, just basic stuff. If you were wrong, whatever, just take your ticket, handle your business, go fight it in court. We're not about to argue on the side of the road. Turn the car light on if it's nighttime. Just simple stuff to make
Keys on the front, hand on the wheel.
Make everybody's life easy. Yeah. They get mad at me. Oh, you should be telling them to assert their rights. I had folks telling them to have a gun ready to shoot the police and all. Like this was real stuff. People was getting mad at me for telling the kids how to stay alive. I'm like, dude, we trying to get back home to our kids. Like, we not trying to be arguing with no police on the side of the road. They tell me I'm a white supremacist. I'm aiding white supremacy, not telling them their rights. I'm like, it's not that I'm not telling them their rights. I'm telling them, first of all, how to start the interaction to keep it cool. I've been speeding before by the police. I pulled over before he even turned the lights on because I knew he was gonna get me. I've done that before. Because I didn't have to come get you, just slow down.
All right. That's crazy. People literally told him, they're like, you need to have your gun ready when the police. What? Here, this is what I've always said. Number one, when you are on the street and an officer approaches you or pulls you over, you are at a disadvantage already. They have things that you don't have. For instance, they're definitely armed. You may or may not be armed at that moment. Okay. But they also have things like backup. Do you have a walkie-talkie where you could just radio and be like, boys, get over here quick. I'm being surrounded by the police. No, you don't. They do. Right. When you, if you don't die during a negative interaction and you go to court, there is an entire criminal justice system that is expecting you to have done things the right way. Now, we could have arguments about what is the right way. We could have arguments about whether or not the police have always done the right way. And the answer to that is no, they haven't. But at the end of the day, the number one thing is that you want to go home safely, not get beat up, definitely not get shot. And we have to be careful. This is what bothers me about people on the right, and I'm going to try not to keep it. I'm going to try to keep it away from politics today because we just want to talk about we want to talk about like the interactions, how we raise our kids, things that we teach them. So one of the things that bothers me about people on the right is they'll just be like, oh, just comply. And they act like if you just comply, all will guaranteed be well. That's not necessarily true. However, if you do certain things, the odds that things will be well go up. And if you do bad things that you shouldn't do, then the odds go down, right? That's ultimately what now, we can have a debate and an argument about the policies that police force have, their use of force. We can have those debates later. Not while you're being pulled over. That's the wrong time. That time is past. At that moment, your only goal should be everybody needs to leave this situation as quickly and safely as possible. Now, I don't mean run away. Okay, I'm not saying like the police pull you over, you decide that he didn't pull you over for a good reason, so you just jet out of there. That's not what I'm saying. That's not good either. I'm just saying like that's our goal. I've got a couple stories that I'll tell you along the way. I remember this comedian years ago, and he was making a joke. And I don't do comedy, okay, so I'm not going to try to repeat his joke because I'll just make it so bad it'll be terrible. But he was telling this joke about artists, and he was making fun of the artist that will do weird things, like they'll put like a whole bunch of paint in their mouth or something, and then they just spit it out on a canvas, and they'll be like, that's artwork. And they're like, don't you seem impressed by this? Isn't it drawing you in? And you're like, no, that sounds kind of gross, actually. And so his point was, he said, I want to see the work that you've done that demonstrates that you understand like some simple concepts, like paint me a picture, do this, do some other things so that I go, oh, okay, you are an artist. Now you're branching out into something else, right? Kind of give me some of the fundamentals to work with. I think of it like that when it comes to like authority and how we approach the police or how we interact with the police, how we engage with our government. You need to understand the fundamentals first. Then if you want to branch out and maybe blur the lines of what is proper or what you should or should not do, that's fine as long as you understand you understand the basics first. So when I see like a video and somebody has gotten pulled over by the police and they're asserting their rights, and they maybe have, like the Constitution or, some document, the law, whatever, and they're asserting their right and they're being a little bit obstinate with the police. I don't mind those videos, but the catch is they understand the fundamentals first. So you don't want to jump and leap and say, okay, I'm going to teach you how to assert your rights and, make good content, if you will, while you're getting, while you're engaging with the police. Don't start with that. We want to start with the basics. Here's how you engage in a way that gets you home safely. Start there. Once you understand that, then you can say, do I want to push the line a little bit and perhaps, engage with the police in a way that's, that kind of increases the conflict, increases tension, but asserts my rights nonetheless. You could do that. That's fine. I have no problem with that. I'm cool with that. All right. The other thing is, being a libertarian, there are a couple of videos that are extremely popular. They're very old. One of them is never talk to the police, and it's this lawyer. I think he is a professor at law school, and he's got this like introductory class, what I think it is, and it's like a 45-minute video, and he's talking about why he's instructing these new law students on why they will want to instruct their future clients to shut up and not say anything. And he's kind of going through, and a lot of people are like, look, when it comes to the police, just shut up. Don't talk, which is good advice. Okay. But we know that young boys in particular aren't so good at that. So since we know they're going to open their big fat mouth, we should probably work with them to say, all right, let's try to temper that. Because one of my guiding principles is when it comes to youth, I don't want to squash their fire, but I do want to direct it. Because if we don't direct it, then if we don't direct that energy, it's going to go somewhere bad. When my son has a lot of energy, I'm like, all right, we need to get outside. We need to go play. We need to wrestle. You've got a lot of energy. We got to burn that energy off, right? I don't want to squat. I'm not just like, oh, you seem like you're bouncing off the walls today. Sit down and read a book, right? Like that's not good, because then he's got that pent up energy, and we don't want that. We want that energy to be directed where it's supposed to go. So even with young boys, yes, we would prefer them to be quiet and answer only, like respond in a way only as required by law. But we know they're not going to do that. So there's this happy middle ground where we say, all right, here's what you need to do. And I think it starts early. Now, I have a video that I love this video. It's got a lot of profanity in it because it comes from Chris Rock. You've probably seen it before, but we're going to watch it before we get into the more serious stuff, just because, we are talking about the police, and I think it's funny, and there is some truth to it. So let's head on back over to Dad TV here.
I will say this.
Whoops, hold on.
I have not had an experience with a white cop that.
There. Okay, sorry about that, folks. All right, so here's this video from Chris Rock. We'll watch it. It is basically how not to get your ass kicked by the police. I'm going to fast forward to the very beginning because it's just the introduction. Because like the way that he would do it is he would have this like stand up and he would be talking and give some comedy jokes, and then he would say, all right, we're going to watch this video. So we'll skip past that part.
People in the black community, myself, often worry that we might be a victim of police brutality. So as a public service, the Chris Rock Show proudly presents this educational video. Have you ever been face to face with a police officer and wondered, is he about to kick my ass? Well, wonder no more. If you follow these easy tips, you'll be fine. First, obey the law. Laws were made for a reason. Think of them as hints. You've heard people say, man, I wouldn't do that shit if I was you. Well, here's some of that shit. Carjacking, armed robbery, arson, selling drugs, buying drugs, stabbing, shooting. You probably won't get your ass kicked if you just use common sense. If you jump a subway turnstile, you might just get off with a warning from the police. But if you jump a turnstile carrying a loaded gun and smoking a joint, then maybe you need your ass kicked. We all know what happened to Rodney King, but Rodney wouldn't have got his ass kicked if he had just followed this simple tip. When you see flashing police lights in your mirror, stop immediately. Everybody knows, if the police have to come and get you, they're bringing an ass kicking with them. Here's a no-brainer. If you're listening to loud rap music, turn that shit off. Blasting "fuck the police" while you're getting pulled over by the police is just ignorant.
As a young guy who happens to like rap music, do you know I've never been pulled over while playing? Have I been? No, I don't think so. I don't know. I've never been pulled over while playing loud rap music, but I have played loud rap music, including F the Police. Okay. And so I find this one very humorous, just because I remember as a youth doing it. And when I was growing up, big speakers, I don't know if they're popular now. I don't think they are. I just don't hear them that much. But they were super popular when I was growing up. And so it was like, man, if you had like some 12-inch subwoofers in your car or even some 15-inch subwoofers, like you were cool, right? And so I had those, and I would play loud rap music. And I've had police like from, in a parking lot, like, kind of flag at me and tell me to, like, motion to me to turn that down. So, but I've never been pulled over. But this is just a funny video. Now, that Liberty lady is asking, she's like, hey. She's like, is showing this Chris Rock video going to get you a copyright strike? I don't know, but I'm willing to risk it because it's funny. That's what I do. I push the limits a little bit. And if I get in trouble, then I get in trouble. It wouldn't be the first time I got in trouble on YouTube. So, like, whatever.
When an officer approaches your car, be polite.
Is there a problem, officer?
And stay in your car with your hands on the wheel.
What the fuck do you want, motherfucker?
So, that's funny, but, remember, which episode was it? It was probably like 20 episodes ago. There was a situation here in Jacksonville where a guy got pulled over. This is the one where the police broke the car window, punched him, and I didn't particularly like it. I didn't like how he behaved. I didn't like how the police behaved. He probably could have used, he could have probably watched this video and maybe come out a little bit better, because he just made that situation really, really bad. But one of the first things that he did when you saw his video, you don't see a lot of the negative things that he did. How convenient ever that was. But when you saw the body cam by the police, they pull up and they're walking up to the car, and the guy opens up the car and kind of like, he's like hanging half out. And the officer's like, whoa, what are you doing here? Right. And so this is true. Like, when there are certain things that you should and should not do to increase your odds of getting home safely. And that dude did not get home quite so safely. But anyway, I just want to kind of mention this, and there was another, I thought about pulling the video, but there's a woman here in Jacksonville 2 weeks ago. I don't really know the exact details, but she pulled up to like an intersection to pick up her kid, got out of the car, left it like running or something like that, and just left it there and started walking to go pick up her kid. And the officer gets out, who's just sitting there, observing things, gets out and he's like, ma'am. And she gets belligerent, like right off the bat. And they ended up getting into a fight. Like it gets to the point where he's like, all right, I'm going to have to arrest you. And then she starts resisting arrest. And I don't mean like she's flexing her arm muscles and the officer's like, stop resisting. I'm talking about she's like literally trying to not be arrested. And then they end up getting into a scuffle. She gets up, she puts her dukes up, and then she swings at the officer. And I'm like, wow, like you really needed to watch this video. So I'm playing this video so that if you are watching it, I don't care if you're black or white, if you're watching and you're like, if the police ever try to arrest me, I'm going to stick my dukes up and I'm going to swing at him. Perhaps you watch this video and save yourself a little trouble. Just say it.
Want to give a friend a ride? Not so fast. Your friend might be crazy. Now, before you let your friend in your car, ask them these questions. Do you have a gun? Do you have drugs? Do you have any warrants? And in case you do get pulled over by the cops,
License and registration, please.
remind your friend to do this one thing. Shut the fuck up.
Man, don't give him shit. What the fuck you want?
All right. That's okay. I think that was enough to make the point. So ultimately, at the end of the day, the things that you want to do is be respectful. Now, I'm seeing in the comments here, and I could even put them up on the screen here before we get to the King Randall video here. So let's see, where was it here? Joe says, "Hey, F the copyright police. It would be nice if it was that easy. However, it is not. And so I got to play to the best of my ability. by the rules that we have. I'm not a big fan of intellectual property or copyright necessarily, but like that's the way it is, and I will push the line every so often, you know, and we'll see what happens. So, and this is why that Liberty lady's like, bro, she's like, I'm about to get monetized over here, and we got to watch our freaking steps. So to copyright strikes, and then you get demonetized. So that's always a possibility, but you know, that's what I do on this show is I push the line a little bit. Let's see. Keith says defund the municipal code enforcement too. You know, there is some talk to be had about defunding things. So again, that is a separate conversation, and I'm not dismissing anybody now. I'm just saying, like, we need to learn when to have certain conversations. So like today, the conversation is going to be like just simple. How do you get home to your family? How do we raise our young boys so that they can come home? Because the last thing I want is my son to turn, like, he's 6 now, so it's not a problem to worry about, but I don't want him to turn, like, you know, even 12 or 13 or 17 or 18 and one day be his last day because I failed as a father to properly teach him how to engage with the police in a way that increases his odds of coming home. That's it. I don't want that. And let me tell you a story. I used to mentor 4 or 5 years ago, and maybe a little bit longer than that. But no, it was definitely longer than that because my son is 6. So it had to have been like 7 or 8 years ago. So 7 or 8 years ago, I was mentoring a kid, probably about 8 years ago. And he was 16 when we first connected. And then I actually mentored him until he aged out at 18. And he one time was telling me about how an officer came up to him, thought he was somebody else, basically grabbed him, and I guess was a bit aggressive. I don't know that he didn't really go into the details, but forced him to sit on the curb or something like that, and was, you know, got his ID, checked, and found out, okay, this is not who I'm looking for, and then let him go. And then, like, at the very end, this kid tells me, he goes, I told him, if you ever do this again, I'm going to turn you in for assault or something like that. And I was like, dude, no, shut up. And he was like, what? And I was like, shut up when you're engaging with the police. And he's like, I had to get my respect. And I was like, you didn't get your respect. Whatever you didn't get it. And I said, never in the history of policedom has an officer been a little bit aggressive with a 17-year-old, and the 17-year-old ran his mouth and said, you're going to give me my respect, officer. And the officer said, you know what, son? You're right. I totally wrong. I messed up. My bad. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Like, that doesn't happen. Like, stop. Just stop, man. You know? And it's not to say that the police was correct. I'm just saying this is not the time and the place to have that fight. Because at that time, again, he has a gun, he has backup, and he has, to some degree, the law on his side until such time you get to court, and then you can fight it out to see if the law really was on his side. But the less trouble you make, the more in your favor, if you've done nothing wrong, that it goes. Like, generally, not always. There are still problems, and I do preach against that. But right now, we want to have a conversation on how do we keep our kids safe. And I'll tell you, years ago, like 2 or 3 years ago, my son, we're driving, and we saw a police officer, and he's like, Dad, make sure you're not going too fast because the police will shoot you. And I was like, what? And my wife looked at me, and she's like, that's you. And I was like, okay. And here's the thing. I don't want my son to grow. Like, it's one thing to have a negative perception about the police because you've observed some things that you didn't like. You review the law. You criticize what they do, right? You've got an objective viewpoint of it. My son has no objective viewpoint. So I don't want him growing up thinking inherently that the police are bad. And I know this is going to rub some of my libertarian peers raw a little bit, but the truth of the matter is you should only have a negative opinion about somebody if you have observable, objective facts for that reason. You should not take somebody else's word that somebody else is bad. I don't think that's a healthy way to look at the world in general and say this group of people is bad. And to put this in terms, and I know I'm kind of blurring the line a little bit with politics. I'm trying not to, but to put this into context in terms that my libertarian peers will understand, if you just teach people all police are bad, you're collectivizing. That's what that is. You're doing the same thing as if somebody says all black people are bad. Same thing. You're saying by virtue of who they are, bad, right? And that's what you're doing. And I know my anarchist peers are going to get angry at me. Too bad. So I want to raise my son so that he understands, like, we have this expectation that most people are good. Most people have good intentions, and we will allow their actions to speak otherwise. And then if he grows up and he says, I don't like certain things that the police do because he's observed it and he's weighed it out and he said, you know what? I've considered the facts. I've considered why they do this. I've considered their side. And at the end of the day, I'm coming down on this position. Fine. I'm okay with that. But for right now, I want him to learn police, like, we expect them to be the good guy. And we expect ourselves to have a positive interaction with them. How do we best make that happen? So that if he has an interaction, he goes home, the officer goes home, and then if we need to fight that out in court, then we can. So that's the gist of the show. That's why I'm going to show you this next video. And we'll go back over to Dad TV here, and we'll play this video. Now, hopefully blurring the videos, I don't think King Randall's going to have a problem with it. Hopefully blurring the video for the Chris Rock one will keep me out of trouble with YouTube. That's why I have the whole Dad TV and I have them blurred and, doing that thing so that, their automated system doesn't necessarily pick up on it. But it may pick up on the audio. I don't know. We'll see. So I'll risk that chance just to have a little bit of fun and kind of try to make the show a little bit more on the lighthearted side as well. But it is what it is. So here we are at Dad TV. Let us play this video from King Randall. Now, he did, like he said, he got a lot of hate for it, and people were very angry. I thought it was a great video, and I would love to do something like this in Jacksonville with boys, or, maybe not with my son. I can just do it, just me and him. We can do a little role play. But I think if you had a group of boys, I think this would be a perfect thing to do for young boys. And it doesn't have to be limited to black kids. It can be white kids, Hispanic kids, Asian kids, whatever, because boys tend to be the ones that get in trouble. Girls too, right? So, but I think young kids would be benefited from having this. All right.
How you doing, sir?
Doing good.
First
thing I want to do is already have my stuff ready, okay?
Yes, sir.
You don't want to get to the freaking car, and when he gets to the car, you got to go fumbling around looking for stuff, right?
Yes, sir.
Why don't we want to fumble around looking for stuff? Exactly, they're gonna feel unsafe. You understand?
Yes, sir.
So regardless of whether they should or shouldn't feel unsafe, that makes somebody feel unsafe. You fumbling around because things happen, right?
Yes.
All right. So you see right off the bat, he's like, "Look, have your stuff ready when the officer gets there. That way, you're not fumbling around. Because where's all your stuff? It's in the console, by your elbow. It's in the glove compartment. It's wherever, and you got to reach over. And so now the officer is going to be eyeballing you, right? And so they're going to be making sure that while you're going to grab your license and your registration, which you are required to by law, you're not also reaching for a gun to turn out and shoot him. Now, I've talked already before. We're not really going to get into it here. I don't like the idea that police will come up to the car and they will be a bit aggressive, and their argument is, well, we never know what we're walking into. Because they also like to say, hey, most police interactions end without any kind of conflict. And so I've talked about that before. I dislike that. But like King Randall said here, he goes, it doesn't matter whether people should or should not feel safe. That's a conversation for a different time. In the moment while you're being pulled over, that is not the time for that conversation. The time for that conversation, what it's time for is everybody to do what they can do to minimize any potential conflict. You have no control over the police. and he really has no control over you. Like if an officer pulls up, he has no control whether you say, "Good afternoon, officer. Why have you pulled me over?" versus, "Why the hell you pulled me over, you son of a bitch?" Right? Like he has no control over that. Okay, but you do. And so I think it's worthwhile teaching these young boys, yes, when it comes to the police, you can initiate the conversation by, being respectful. Start with being respectful. Start by having your stuff ready so that we can make this whole interaction be as short as possible, right? Because at least for people that are being pulled over, because I've been pulled over, you don't want to be there any longer than you have to. So why, and this is one of the things, like, people will argue and yell at the police, and I'm like, you realize you're ensuring that you're having this interaction longer. Like, if you don't want to be there, if I don't want to be pulled over, why would I do the things that are going to keep us there longer? Doesn't make any sense.
So when they get there, the first thing you want to do is already have your license ready and have your hands on the steering wheel. You understand?
Yes, sir.
Have your hands on the steering wheel. Why?
Because before they don't think you reach for them.
So you're not reaching for stuff, right?
Yes, sir.
All right, cool. And another thing I want to do, I'm going to let all my windows down, okay? I ain't got nothing to hide, right?
Yes, sir.
I'm going to let all my windows down in the car. And if it's nighttime, I'm going to turn the car light on so he can see everything in the car, right?
Yes, sir.
Why am I doing that?
But he don't think you trying to hide nothing or somebody trying to hide something for you.
Exactly. Everybody feels safe, right?
Yes, sir.
So
Okay, so let's pause here. I know some people will be like, hey, that's kind of like almost, that's just shy of giving them permission to search your car. Okay? That's a different conversation. Right now, we want to tell young boys the basic fundamentals. Not the fundamentals of your rights, the fundamentals of, if you have an interaction, here's the foundation that will go toward you going home safely. That's what we want. Now, I'm not a big fan of rolling all your windows down so the officer can see. I personally wouldn't do that. However, I have no objection to him telling young boys, do this. I tell my son, I want you to think about something. If you're a parent, you understand this. And most of you who are not parents will understand it as well. There are things that I tell my son you cannot do, or you're not allowed to do, or whatever, but they're not necessarily bad things, because I want him to get older and learn when it's appropriate to do those things. So, for instance, my son is not allowed to use profanity. Why? Because he doesn't understand when it's appropriate and when it's not appropriate. So we just take it off the table. I don't let him, when he comes out to with me in the garage to do some woodworking, I let him use a drill, but I don't let him use the table saw. Why? Because he's 6, and there are way too many concerns that he is not prepared for. There's nothing wrong with the table saw. Just a matter of he's not ready. Now, when he's 16, he will be allowed to use the table saw. Do you see the gist here? Like, boys can grow into better dynamics, but I think at the ages that as they're growing up, we give them a little more responsibility that is appropriate for their age, and to some degree, if you're a parent, based on what you know your child to be. So my son is 6. I allow him to do some things that maybe some other parents who have a 6-year-old wouldn't allow their child to do, for various reasons. Maybe their child is not as mature. Maybe their child hasn't learned certain skills that they believe that they could utilize to keep them safe while they're doing a particular activity, right? So it varies, but I think it's good to have a simple foundation, even if it's not something that I personally would do. Also, I want to point out, King Randall is a black man. Black people tend to have more negative interactions with the police. Okay. And there's a negative perception from many police officers of young black males. You can argue whether or not they should or should not have that, but the fact of the matter, it exists. So one of the ways that you get past and you create a better perception is by just going out of your way, doing things differently. Right? So I don't have a problem at all with what he's saying, even though it's not necessarily something I would do. I do not roll all my windows down when I get pulled over by the police. In fact, I usually only roll it down like a small crack, and then I hand him all the stuff, just enough so that he can hear me, he or she can hear me, then I can hear them. And then I can pass the information that they need to them, and they can pass it back to me. That's what I do personally, but I have no issues with this. Let's continue.
Already starting the stop off great. He probably in a good mood that I'd have let the window down. I'd have turned the lights on. He probably in a better mood now, right?
Yes, sir.
All right, so boom, he gonna come to the car? Yes, sir. All right, cool. So he gonna get my license. He may or may not go back to the car, which they usually do. They're gonna basically check your name, see if you got any warrants, if your license suspended, blah, blah, blah. But you sit tight and just wait for him to finish. Good?
Yes, sir.
All right, cool. He's coming back, bring my license. He's probably gonna give me a ticket for not having my seatbelt on. Now, what's the wrong thing to do if I'm getting pulled over and he come up to the car?
Run.
Nah, what run? We're not gonna run. And what's another thing we're not gonna do? Talk back, cussing, talking smack, all that stuff, right?
Yes, sir.
We're not doing none of that number if we get pulled over. We're not talking smack, we're not cussing, we're not telling them what our rights is, blase, blase, blah. We're not doing none of that, you understand?
Yes, sir.
We're trying to get home, and he trying to get home, cool?
Yes, sir.
So we're just trying to make sure everybody stays safe, because if we start talking smack, now what if he decide not to give me a ticket because I was being cool and I let my windows down and all that, right?
Yes, sir.
But if I decide to, well, I had my seatbelt on. I just took it off when you came up here. He gonna get upset, right?
Yes,
Because he
sir.
know you lying. So the best thing to do, also when you get pulled over, is to tell the truth, right?
Yes, sir.
Another thing you don't want to do, if you look inside my truck right there, what I got like on my windshield right there,
Headlight.
it's a dash cam. It's a dash cam. You don't want to, if you can encourage your mama, or whenever you get a license, you want to make sure that you have a dash cam in your vehicle as a second precaution. So for insurance purposes, get in an accident, you want to have an inside and an outside dash cam. You understand?
Yes, sir.
Make sure you keep that in your vehicle. We good?
Yes, sir.
All right. So now let's say he has to pull me out the car.
Could you step out the car for me?
Is there a reason I need to step out the car?
The license came back suspended. Could you step out the car for me?
Okay. Your license come back to suspended, you got to step out the car. I'm not going to be like, oh, well, ain't no way. No. Just go ahead and do it.
You see what he's saying here? He's telling him, he's like, look, obey the officer. And I know for us libertarians, it's like we don't want to say that. But the truth of the matter is, kind of like what Chris Rock said, if the police have to come get you, they're bringing an ass whooping. That's just the way it works. And you are at a disadvantage. Whether we like it or not, you are at a disadvantage because the officers pulled you over. He is in charge. However, you are not powerless. You can, the way that you engage can really affect the outcome. So, for instance, he said, we're not going to run our mouth, because what happens if the officer pulls him over and, feeling generous for whatever reason, it decides not to write you a ticket? Like, what if that's going to be the outcome? That's a pretty good outcome. Like, look, I got money to pay a ticket. I don't want to pay a ticket, okay? And so if I get pulled over because I'm speeding, and I actually was speeding, and the officer just wants to say, look, bro, you've been cool today. I'm just going to let you off with a warning. Slow it down, buddy, which has happened to me before. I have had that exact experience. I would not have had that experience if he pulls me over and I was like, dude, what the F you pull me over for, dude? I can't believe you. I'm trying to get somewhere. like I just ruined it. Like, any generosity that might have happened, ruined, done, right? And not only does it ruin generosity, it escalates the situation unnecessarily. And look, I don't know about y'all. I am not trained to fight the police. Okay? But the police are trained to take you down. Just think about that for a minute. So I don't want to escalate the situation. And to be honest with you, I don't want to get pulled. You ever been pulled over? You know how it goes. You're driving along. You see the lights in your car and you go, oh. Every time. Don't you? Don't lie. You do. Nobody has ever been like, oh, I wonder what he's up to. I wonder if he just wants to say hi. I guess I'll pull over real quick. Like, you never say that. Everybody's like, oh, man, damn. And then you think, and you're like, I was speeding. I didn't have my seatbelt on. I've got crack cocaine in my car, whatever, right? Like, you know whether or not you've done something most of the time. Like, sometimes you're not sure. You're like, man, I wear my seatbelt. I'm not, speeding. What's going on? But your first reaction is always, oh, man, I got pulled over. You don't want to be there. So don't extend the experience any longer than you have to. do the best, be polite, don't run your mouth, have ready what he needs, because the quicker that it's ready, the quicker you can get out of there, quicker you can go home. And if you get a speeding ticket, if you want to dispute the ticket or whatever, there is a place to do that. It is called a courtroom. You may or may not win, but your chances of winning are a lot higher if you didn't come running your mouth and all this other stuff.
Good?
Yes, sir.
Why we ain't arguing with him?
Because he will literally.
We gonna make him mad. We might just escalate the stop. You understand?
Yes, sir.
All right, license could be suspended. Now he can say he smelled marijuana, right?
Yes, sir.
If he says he smelled marijuana, there's nothing that you can do about it. You understand?
Yes, sir.
Get out the car. You understand?
Yes, sir.
If he say he smelled weed, just get out. We not fussing and fighting on the side of the road. You understand?
Yes, sir.
So have there been situations where people have done everything absolutely right and something still happened? Sure, but is that happening all the time? No, that's not happening every day. That's not happening every time somebody get pulled over. Most people have a basic stop every day, just like this, where they get pulled over, they take their ticket, and they go on by their day. You understand?
Yes, sir.
So don't let nobody make you feel scared of the cops or anything like that, but you also want to make sure you take the proper precautions so you still have a good stop. You understand?
Yes, sir.
And of course,
All right, so I love this. He said, make sure you take the proper precautions so you have a good stop, which is not something we really think of, because when I get pulled over, it's never good, because I'm probably going to get a ticket, and I don't want a ticket. That's not good. Now I gotta take time out of my day. I gotta, if I want to contest the ticket, then I gotta go and contest it, or I've at least got to go down and pay it. Now, it's a little different these days. You can go online and pay it, so you have a little bit more convenience. But I still have to pay it, and then it's like what, $150, $125, something like that. And that's money that I could have used for something else. So and on one hand, there's no such thing as a good stop, but there is a good stop in the sense of, hey, this didn't escalate any further than it absolutely had to. That is a good stop. And that's what we want. And to the marijuana thing, he is correct. Officer smells marijuana. Maybe he's right. Maybe he's wrong. Maybe he finds no marijuana, right? And whatever. That is something that you have a fight in court, right? And this is where, when you get to court, like, you ever heard about cases that get tossed out because the officer didn't do something properly? That's how you ensure the case gets tossed out if he does something improperly, by you not making it worse. Because if you make it worse, well, chances are the case isn't going to go your way.
the best way to not have to interact with the police is what? Not break the law, right?
Yes, sir.
Don't be speeding, put your seatbelt on, don't be riding with your cell phone in your hand, all that stuff, right?
Yes, sir.
Like I said, if you get pulled over and you truly don't know, he probably gonna tell you already. And if he don't, just ask him why you get pulled over. Cool?
Yes, sir.
All right, so that's how we gonna keep that real simple. That's the easiest way to keep the stop simple, to make sure everybody's safe, make sure you safe, and make sure everybody get back home to their family. We good?
Yes, sir.
In a nutshell, everything that Mr. Randall told y'all was pretty jam up, okay?
Yes,
One thing
sir.
you want to make an officer feel is safe. All right, that's the key, because that's what I feel. That's my key to going home, is being safe. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, I want to talk about this because the officer just said you want to make the officer feel safe, and now you might be like, "What? No, that's not my job." It kind of is. Any interaction that you have with somebody else, you ever heard the phrase "it takes two to tango"? Yeah. Well, that phrase exists for a reason, because both people have a role to play in any interaction between two people. If I wake up in the morning and I go into my son's room to wake him up, we both have a role to play with our interaction. Same thing with me and my wife, me and my friends, me and the audience, so on and so forth. And the more you don't have control over the other person, but you have control over you, which gives you a limited amount of influence over the other person. So if my wife comes home, and I've kind of used this example before. If my wife comes home and she's had a particularly bad day and she snaps at me, what's going to happen? I'm probably going to get snippy with her, right? Now, I might not, I might be able to maintain myself and recognize that she's had a bad day and not be snippy myself. But the odds that I will return fire go up if she comes home and she's, being snippy with me when I didn't do anything, right? Same thing with the police. If the police pull you over, and this is what we want to teach our boys, this is what I'll be teaching my son. If the police pull you over, be respectful. He may be in a bad mood. He may be a bad officer. He may be a lot of things, or she, right? But the more that you can do to de-escalate as soon as possible, the better your odds are. And that's what this is all about. This is about increasing your odds. It's never a guarantee. You could get pulled over by an officer who is a bad officer, who does things the wrong way and escalates it no matter what you do. That is possible. Libertarians know this. We fight. We've got a long list of names of people that we will tell you, we're doing the right thing, exactly what the police said, and the police ended up shooting them for some dumb reason, right? Those exist. It's not that I'm saying if you do all the things right, it will always go in your favor. But Randall is correct when we say, if you do these things, your odds of having a good stop, meaning a not negative one, not any more negative than it has to be, they go up. And look, if you're a dad and you have a child, boy or girl, doesn't matter. If you're a dad and you do not teach your child these things, you are failing your child. You are in derelict of your duty. It is my job to make sure that my son is prepared to have the best interaction with anybody he meets, whether it's a kid at the school that he goes to, whether it's his friends down the road, whether one day in the future it's a police officer, his future spouse, an employer, whatever. My job is to make sure he is prepared to be in a position and fully capable of doing his part in having a positive interaction with anybody he engages with. I have no control over the people that he will meet. He won't have any control over the people that he will meet. He only has control over his own self. Get the basics down. Then later, if he wants to assert his rights in a particular manner, which may escalate the situation a little bit, may create some hostility with the police, that's a different story. Get the basics first.
It's like you want to get home, we want to get home. And I tell everyone, listen, once you're pulled over by the cops, all right, prime example with your license, right? You see how quick he gave me his license, all right? When you turn 16, you're going to be super happy to get your license, right?
Yes, sir.
So why when you want to show him to me, right?
Yes, sir.
Makes sense, right? Oh, yeah,
Yes,
here you
sir.
go, Officer Franklin, let me show you my license. Man, I got my license, I'm jammed up, I'm good. All
Okay. I'm not a fan of that logic there. Like, oh, you're 16, you're excited to have your license, so why aren't you excited to show it to the officer? I'm not a big fan of that logic, but these are young boys, right? What we're trying to do early on is teach them, the way that you engage matters. And if we got to use logic that maybe wouldn't pass adult muster, because sometimes you use logic to get a message across to kids that, it's maybe not good logic, but it works. It kind of helps bring the point around, right? And I think that's okay. This is why people getting mad at King Randall, maybe get mad at the officer, they're silly. Because at the end of the day, you're teaching young boys. And again, the lesson that a young boy learns, and the lesson that you tell a 6-year-old is going to be slightly different than the one that you tell a 16-year-old than what a 26-year-old will have, right? They're different lessons because you're at a different age and you need to hear it differently so that you can move on. Yes, at the age of, and these guys aren't 6, I don't think. They're probably a little bit older than that. They look somewhere between 10 and 12. But so like 10 and 12 years old, yeah, it's okay to say, hey, aren't you going to be excited about getting your license? Yes. Well, guess what? Shouldn't you be excited to give it to the police? I'm okay with them saying yes, because I want them to be prepared for the lesson that changes when they get to be 16, right? It's going to be a little different. Are they going to be excited? No, they're not. Are you going to be able to use that on them? No, they're not. But you've already taught them to have this expectation of, there's no reason for me to fear the police. There's no reason for me to start that engagement, interaction negatively. So therefore I won't, right? You've kind of already got that set in their mind early on so that when they're 16 and they go, yeah, no, I'm not really excited to give the officer my ID. Like they'll know that. They'll figure that out on their own. And I'm not excited because I'm being pulled over and I know I'm probably going to get a ticket. So no, I'm not going to be excited. That logic wouldn't work on an adult, but it's great for a young kid. That's it. So I love this video. I don't necessarily agree with everything. Some of it would work well with young kids. Some of it, not at all with adults in terms of the logic necessarily, but it's a good foundation to have.
It's a way of keeping us from doing a lot of stuff. How you doing, sir? It's a way of keeping yourself safe and keeping us on our toes, okay? I'm one of those officers that I'm big on honesty, you know. Sometimes I may write a ticket. Most of the times I may not. You know, if you know you're doing something wrong, just go ahead and admit it so we can get everything on rolling and get you on about your business, okay? The part about putting your hands on the steering wheel, making your hands visible, that's one of the biggest issues that we have, all right? Just put your hands on the steering wheel and you can talk to me like this, right? That's not asking you to do too much, all right? It's just asking you to, you know, that way we don't have to worry about you reaching to get some, or if we tell you, hey, could you give me your license and your wallet is on the seat? Hey, Officer Franklin, I'm gonna grab my wallet off the seat, all right, man, go ahead. You know, now you're not old enough to do this, but once you get to the point where you have a weapon in the car, I always let an officer know you got a weapon. Every time. Hey, listen, hey, Officer Franklin, I'm a police officer. When I get pulled over, you know, because we, as officers do get pulled over, the first thing I say is, hey, how you doing? You know, I do have a weapon in the car. And most of them will say, okay, you got a license for that? Yeah, I got a license for that. You know, and sometimes I show them a badge. Sometimes I say, hey, I'm a police officer. I got a weapon in the car so that they know and they understand. And I'll tell them where it's at. Hey, man, it's over there in that seat, or it's under my seat, or it's in the glove compartment. That way they'll know. That way if you reach in that area, then they got a reason to feel nervous, all right? But if they already know, and you already got your hands on, you don't have to worry.
Yeah, and I personally, like, every time I let an officer know I had a weapon, they usually don't bother you. They don't be like, oh, let me see your license. No, they just be like, all right, bet. And usually what I do, if I have my firearm in the car, while I'm getting pulled over, I put it in the passenger seat so they can see it when they get there. So that way I'm like, hey, weapon over there. And sometimes I don't really have to say much because they already see it, you know? So I just try to make it visible so we already have an understanding of we all trying to feel safe. And if a police officer pull up to your car and you didn't already let all the windows down and turn the light on, you already starting it off in a great mood.
You've eliminated a lot of questions.
Yep.
You've also eliminated me having to pull out this little flashlight right here and shine it all in your car and do all this extra stuff that you don't like me doing anyway, okay? So if the lights are already on, I'm gonna just look and, okay, cool. I can see who's in the back seat, see what they got going on. I can see everybody in the car, you know, so you've eliminated that. 3 words I want y'all to remember. Get home safe.
Get home.
All right. Get home safe. That's what it's all about. Get home safe. And really, if you think about it, any interaction with somebody else, you want to leave that interaction as positive as possible, right? It doesn't matter. Like if you're out at the club and you meet a girl, you probably want to, you know, leave that with a positive interaction. Maybe you don't score a date or a phone number or something like that, but at least if it's positive, right? So these kind of lessons are good to teach our children so that they can get out in the world and have the best interaction possible from their end, no matter who it is. And yeah, there's some, we can get into the finer details, you know, of policing and do we like this? Do we like that? Should we end qualified immunity? Those kind of things. That's all fine. But first and foremost, I think we as fathers, it is our duty to make sure that we teach our children how to, from their side, have the best interaction with anybody they meet, in particular, anybody who's in authority that can cause them more struggle, more pain, whatever, right? It's one thing if your kid has a negative interaction with another kid at school, like, okay, that's not the worst thing in the world. It could be the worst thing in the world very quickly if they have a negative interaction with the police. I've done shows where I've talked about, like, even 13-year-olds, Adam Toledo up in Chicago, 13-year-old boy out cavorting around 2 a.m. in the morning, carrying a firearm, got chased by the police, stopped, went to throw the firearm. The officer saw the gun, saw it getting pulled out, and in a moment's notice, and shot him. He killed him. He's no longer here. I want you to think about that. I don't want my kid to no longer be here at 13 when I may have been able to prevent it. Right? And this isn't a matter of, do I like policing? Do I think they should be defunded? None of that matters, really. I mean, it does. But in terms of being a dad, in terms of how we raise our kids while they're still kids, none of that matters. That's not or maybe I'll put it this way. That's not my first priority. My first priority is get home safe. Come home, son. We can fight it out in court later. When you get older, we can talk about the nuances. We could talk about things like qualified immunity. We could talk about how they police. We could talk about what kind of laws are on the books, whether they should be on the books or not. Right? We could talk about the policies that any police station has when they pull somebody over, whether or not they can use a particular level of force in a particular situation. We can have all those conversations after you get home safe. First and foremost, I want you to come home safe. And every father should want that. So again, I will say it. If you're a dad and these aren't the things that you're teaching your son, you are failing them. And you need to do better. All right, let's check out the comments here. Let's see if you guys are tearing me up. And then we'll head on out for the day. Let's see here. Do. Keith says, DL is giving us the talk. I love it. Yes, I am. I am giving the talk. That is what Liberty Dad does. He gives the talk so that everybody can go home, because that's what I want. I want you to go home, right? And so, yes, I have given you the talk. That's funny. That Liberty lady says, end qualified immunity and a lot of this goes away. Yes and no, right? Because if, let's say we end qualified immunity, so there's a lot of bad policing that would be cleared up right away. It doesn't stop things necessarily, because you can still have an officer that does something negative, and then even though they may get punished for it, that negative thing still happened. Right? So that can, people do bad things even when they know there's a consequence. But it does clear up a lot. And the other thing is, it doesn't guarantee that, like let's say you end qualified immunity, so now the police officers have to change how they do their job. And I think that would actually be a benefit, I think, personally. And I think it's a good thing to end qualified immunity. So I totally support that 100%. That doesn't mean that a citizen might not still get out of line to the point where they don't go home. And then the officer might have been in the right. Because we've seen some of these videos. Like a lot of people wanted body cams. And then now that we got body cams, a lot of people were expecting, just to see left and right, police always doing it wrong. And in some cases, we have seen that. But in some cases, we have seen where like there's been an accusation that the police were wrong. And then we saw the body cam and we're like, yeah, no, you as Joe Citizen, I don't mean you, Joe, but you as, I guess they're always Joe Public, Joe Citizen, whatever. But you as the citizen have done it all wrong, and you kind of earned whatever happened to you, right? Like if the officer's trying to arrest you because you were being belligerent and then, getting physical, and then they try to arrest you, and then you turn it into an actual fight, as one woman did here in Jacksonville, qualified immunity, being ended doesn't stop the fact that you deserve to get tossed on the pavement. Sorry. Like that's just, that's just the way it is. So it does end a lot, but it's not going to necessarily make everything. And you still, as a citizen, have your own role to play. Let's see here. Let's see. Yes. DL is saying to fight effectively. That's it. That's all I'm saying. And right now, this is dad talk. This is me saying, like, as a dad, how do I want to raise my kid? Well, I don't want to raise my kid that, hey, when you're 16, you assert your rights. Because let's be honest, do you trust a 16-year-old to properly assert their rights and not make it worse? No, you do not. Don't even pretend like you do. I know I don't. No parent should have ever trusted me as a 16-year-old to assert my rights effectively. Now, you might argue and say, well, maybe if we just teach them early on, perhaps. But 16-year-olds are 16-year-olds. And they get in trouble. That's what they do. So I think it's better to be more cautious. And then as they get a little bit older, then they can worry about how they want to assert their rights and whatnot. And they can take that risk. But as long as you're 16, as long as you're under my roof, we're going to do things in a specific way so that you go home safely. Because that's all I want. And then if we need to fight this out in court, I want all the odds in my favor. Because police do things wrong. Even that officer admitted it in the video. He said police don't always do it right. And I want, if I have to go to court and say this police officer wronged my child, I want the odds in my favor, in my son's favor. And I want to be able to basically show receipts and say, see, Your Honor, the officer was wrong. He needs to be punished. He or she needs to be punished. And it makes it harder if your child is belligerent and acting like a fool. That's all. We just want to fight effectively. But more importantly, we want our kids to come home. That's it. Let's see, what else? Like I'm seeing. Okay, well, so Joe says, we're still blasting F the police though, right? Well, here's the thing. I live in Florida and you do too. So most of the time my windows are up because I got the air conditioning on. And much of the time my kid's with me. So I'm not really blasting F the police anymore, right? It's not because like I'm old and I'm like, oh, I don't do that youthful stuff. When I'm by myself, I will play, loud offensive music. But now just my circumstances have slightly changed a little bit. And I'm getting old, so it's not as loud as it used to be. You know what I'm saying? Just because I'm old, and I got to protect my hearing, so that my son, when he's like, hey, Dad, I'm not like, what? Yeah. So let's see what else we got in here. Yes, this is a good one right here. I like this. Let's help Liberty Dad get monetized by the end of this weekend on YouTube. He's only like 160 watch hours away. Put an old episode on and walk away from your computer or watch it intently and learn. And you can do that too. Don't just... the Fuentes episode will help. It's it's the one where I talked about Tucker Carlson. That one got a lot of views. Hopefully that's going to go toward getting me monetized. But yes, go do that. Go check out some old episodes. I've got a lot of good episodes, folks. When you've done over 600 episodes and you talk about anything and everything, there's a lot there to choose from. So go find something. Go check me out. Encourage your friends, your family to watch an episode or two that I have, and that will go toward me. So that's what I got for the show today, folks. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you found it inspiring on some level. Maybe you're not a parent, but that's okay. Let people know and say, hey, Liberty Dad has a good way to help raise your kids so that they can come home safely. We can deal with our libertarian rantings about the police and government and authority. We can deal with that at a separate time. But here's a good way, some good tips to raise your child so that your child, first and foremost, gets home safely. Then after that, we can deal with the overbearing government that we in fact do have. So go let people know so that they can check it out. But otherwise, that's a wrap. That's what I got for the show today, folks. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you Monday with another bill review. Have a good one. You know that I'm all about supporting organizations that hold my values. Make sure you head on over to blackgunsmatter.shop. They've got apparel, stickers, and more. Use the code LibertyDad, all one word, at checkout to score a 10% discount. Or just hit the referral link in the show notes. That'll make it so much easier. Remember, I'm not just a voice on a mic. I'm a dad who's working hard to deliver to you the best libertarian content. Connect with me on Linktree, where you'll find links to my Patreon and buy me a coffee, because every bit helps keep this show rolling. Plus, you can find me on my other platforms to stay in the loop. With your help, this show, The Message of Liberty, will be seen and heard by more people. As always, I appreciate you tuning in and look forward to seeing you in the next episode.